Hello and welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley, and this is another Derbyshire church. This is the church of St Edmund, King and Martyr, Fenny Bentley. Now, Fenny Bentley is so named to distinguish it from another village called Bentley, which no longer exists. This village was called Hungry Bentley, and it seems to have been so hungry that it starved to death. It disappears as a result of the Black Death. All that's left there today is the manor house. That's located not that far from here, but it is far enough. But it's close enough also for people to confuse the two if there wasn't a distinguishing name. So Hungry Bentley, this is Fenny Bentley, and Fenny because it's down in a valley near Ashbourne. The church is largely 14th century, although it has a whacking great Victorian aisle added for the usual reasons for whacking great Victorian aisles, which basically is, well, we need more space to seat people. So, St Edmund's Fenny Bentley. Well, let's have a look around. As usual, we begin at the west end. As I say, it's a 14th century building. The screen, you can see straight ahead, is 15th century. It's been moved over the years, but it is original to this building. And apart from the top, which is the canopy that's been restored in the 19th century, it is basically 15th century, and the restoration uses patterns and images from the original. Now, there's been a church here since the 12th century, and some bits of it still survive. You will notice here that arched door recess, and it's a very Norman style door archway. Also, there is a slight batter to that wall. Essentially, it's thinner at the top than it is at the bottom, and that's also quite a good sign of a 12th century building. Some bits of the old box pews are being used as panelling in the tower here. And the oldest thing in the church is the font. Font with this little, probably a lily at the bottom. And you can't really see this because the light's not great, but it is a sort of red, local red sandstone. Obviously the cover is a little bit later, covers 19th century. This window here is a memorial to Major Beresford Havelock. Now, Havelock may ring a few bells, and the reason for that is that, yes, he was descended from Major Henry Havelock, famed for his role in putting down the Indian Mutiny. Henry Havelock was indeed his grandfather. Henry Havelock married into the Beresford family. They were a big local family. We'll see one of their, well, more than one, I suspect, of their memorials as we go around here, but there's a particular tomb. In fact, they had a private chapel in this church, and their fortified manor house was located in the village. Obviously, it's still a private house today. It's not one of these big castles that's ruinated and open to the public, but it's come down in the world a bit. So we proceed eastwards. Pan over here. This is the north aisle, and this is built in the 1880s. It very much follows some of the style of the original building, and we can just see that window there has obviously been taken out of the north wall of the medieval church and inserted in the new wall after these arches have been opened. The aim has been to do something that's quite sympathetic to the building. Pulpit, that pulpit originally was located a bit further toward the central aisle where we are, but it got in the way. It obscured the reading desk, and so they moved it back. The parish chest, and you can see here you've got your three different locks. One of the locks has gone, but you've got your central lock that would have been a padlock style, and then you've got a lock on the other side. And of course, the whole point of this is, as we've said before, to make sure that no one person had access to the registers and valuables kept therein. The lectern is 20th century. It replaced a brass 19th century one, and it's a good thing it did. And here we have, say, this screen. There is another screen, we'll see it on the way back. And we move through into the chancel. It's here, you see these carvings here. We have a fox carrying away a bird, and then on this side we have a rose. So there's a little bit of that sort of medieval playfulness, shall we say. It's something you often miss with the Victorian imitations. Here we have the sacrifice of Isaac, Joseph revealing himself to his brethren, and then Noah and the dove. And this was actually late 19th century. It's in memory of Harriet Barnes, whose husband Jeremiah had been the vicar of nearby Tissington. Two texts: by faith Abraham offered up Isaac, and for we are saved by hope. We have, it's a bit gloomy in here, but we have the altar now. The Victorians raised this excessively, and thankfully in the 20th century somebody said, you know what, having to go up half a dozen steps to get here doesn't really make very much sense. So just put some lights on in here. Maybe leave that one. And you can see we've got this carved reredos with paintings, the paintings on mosaics. And there are frescoes either side. And this is all done by the Beresfords. Now, this is the old hall. This was their mansion. And this is an old picture of it. You can see it's a big, solid, fortified tower. And we have a lot of Beresford memorials here in the chancel. We've got there one of the old pews. And there another old pew, or rather these appear to be made out of bits of old pews. And you can see all these Beresfords. But the big Beresford memorial, the great Beresford memorial, is this one, with these shrouded figures. And these shrouded figures, now there's a piece of information on it. So this is Thomas Beresford, who died in 1473, and his wife Agnes. And they're depicted unusually in their shrouds. Obviously Agnes is the smaller one, and he's the bigger one. And down there are their children, who are all shown in their shrouds. Just over there we have the banner. Now this is the Beresford Chapel. It's now largely occupied by the organ. But in the Middle Ages this was a separate chapel from the rest of the church. There wasn't a north aisle, so that would have been a wall across there, and the Beresford Chapel would have been their private chantry. There would have been a priest to say masses for them. Here we have the founder of the Beresfords, the first Beresford. And there he is, kneeling in prayer in his armour, with Combermere Abbey behind him. This represents Beresfords, and then we have a Beresford Arms. Here we have, you see, there's no altar here now. There's a communion table, that's all. But we have, and the table isn't obviously used for communion or anything like that, but we do have a reredos. We've got St Anthony, St Catherine, St Mary Magdalene, and of course St Edmund. And here we have Thomas Beresford, James Beresford, and Agnes Hassett. So this is very much the Beresford Chapel. It's now kind of used the vestry, because obviously after the Reformation, the abolition of private chantries, there's no reason to have a Beresford chantry like this. East window, we have all the Marys: Mary Cleopas, the Virgin Mary, Mary Magdalene, Mary Salome, and in the centre Christ receiving little children. Blessed are the pure in heart. See, the Beresfords have put a lot of money into restoring this church and making it look as impressive as possible. And we can look through this medieval screen, and you can see how it does very much screen the chancel from the rest of the church. There's the famous Beresford Tomb with the organ behind it. The organist is kind of stuck off on his own out up there, or on her own. Past the pulpit, thankfully wooden, although on a stone base. Now this screen here was originally between the Beresford Chapel and the chancel. It's been moved when the Beresford Chapel was had this aisle attached to it. You can just see up there also the painted ceiling of the Beresford Chapel. Can't see it very well, mind you. And there are angels looming out of the roof. Now here is quite an interesting display because it shows the development of the building. That originally you've got 1790, it looked like this. After the 1847 and 50 restoration, it looked like this, but had no spire yet. And then in 1888, it gains, 1864, it gains a spire, and there we have the interior set out. So originally it's like that, and then the Beresford Chapel gets added, and then finally we get the church as it is today. So there we are, Fenny Bentley, St Edmund's, the ancient church of the Beresford family. Now, the connection with Henry Havelock's interesting because Havelock is an evangelical Baptist. And his troops are known as Havelock Saints because they're noted that they're not the sort of carousing soldiers who've got soldiers basically with a bad reputation. We have here the war memorial out the back. Fenny Bentley, 1914-1919. That's quite common because 1919, of course, is when the Treaty of Versailles is signed. So that's the inside here. Let's go outside and have a look around. Also, here we are outside at St Edmund's, Fenny Bentley. You can see this lovely 14th century building, its tower, and then of course the spire added. The tower has been rebuilt in the 19th century, and so has and of course the spire, as we saw, the pictures inside, has been added later. Marvellous windows, and that nice porch that appears to be, well, the door certainly is 16th century, maybe 17th century, I suspect 16th. So we'll have a general perambulation the outside and see the signs of the Victorian restoration. So as we said, this is the outside at St Edmund's. As we come out here, we see these big 14th century windows, which would have been originally filled with stained glass. That's one of the reasons for these big windows, is to show off your posh stained glass. There is a major road here. We're just beside the road that goes between Ashbourne and Buxton, not that far from Ashbourne along here. And that's why you just heard that lorry going honk honk. There's a lorry going up towards wherever's up there, I think Brassington up there. And then down here we've got, from happier days, you see the whacking great lorry go past, we have the Lich Gate. I don't think that's used very much these days because Lich Gate, you're coming up straight from the main road. So access today is usually another way, and then we have someone's nice big memorial with Celtic cross style. So we'll head down. I won't head down to the Lich Gate, it's a bit treacherous down there. And you can see, well, there's a fence up here because that part of the I suspect that part of the graveyard's used for grazing, so we'll wander back round past the south side, and this is the original part, or the oldest part of the church, the south wall of the nave. So first of all, south wall of the chancel, and you can see these nice, somewhat weathered windows. The priest's door here is completely non-functional, has been for over 100 years, I believe. Big but very eroded table tomb. Another big window. Got another one of these stone roofs here. The porch roof is made not of wood covered in slate, but it is actually a stone construction. And this very nice carving there, 16th century by the look of it. And here we have this Norman doorway, and this is the oldest part of the building. The tower has been completely rebuilt in the 19th century because it has to hold that spire. If you're putting a spire on a tower, that involves a lot of extra weight, particularly a stone spire like this. And if you just plonk it on top of an existing tower, the tower's just going to come crashing down and destroy everything. So very sensibly, don't do that. The north side, this is, as I say, largely Victorian, other than the chantry, but you can see the windows are in imitation of the 14th century, and yes, that is a portaloo. They are quite common because they are things that churches need. Your congregation expects these days these facilities, not like it used to be. We'll leave that there. So St Edmund's Fenny Bentley, 14th century with a big Victorian aisle. And so there we have it. The dedication, St Edmund's Fenny Bentley, the ancient church of the Beresfords, and a lovely example of these bigger Derbyshire churches. Well, I say bigger, grander perhaps. Bigger now because the Victorians slapped the aisle on. Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you till the next time.